Welcome to our YouTube video series on franchise law. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal. And in this particular video, we're going to be discussing the limitations of franchise disclosure as provided by large franchisors. Now, as you might all discern when you get into a new franchise, you're provided with a disclosure document in addition to the franchise agreement. And these disclosure documents are considered the progeny of franchise legislation, be it the Alberta Franchise Act, the Ontario Arthur Wishart Act, which is a Franchise Disclosure Act, or a number of other provincial franchise acts and legislations on this matter. Nevertheless, you have to understand, when they first were written up by the legislators, they were designed to create disclosure protections for prospective franchisees. And as such, we're determined to provide a range of information that was particularized in the hope that it would provide insights for those franchisees and in turn would allow them to make reasonable decisions as to whether or not to invest their money and acquire a franchise with that particular franchise system. Nevertheless, what happens is that the large franchisors and their large corporate law firms worked to respond to those franchise documents and put them in a way that benefits the franchisor. So they do disclose the information that's required in a very particularized way. So they provide information specific to the legislation. But in addition to that, they couch everything in other legal language which is designed to protect the franchisor and also to limit the amount of information that they undertake to provide and disclose. And that's why there's no more any sense of projections. Information is what the potential of the business is. Because any kind of information that's forward-looking is problematic from a legal standpoint to a franchisor. And as such, what happens is that you have the requisite information being provided, but truly the critical information being limited by the franchisor. They don't talk about it, and they're restricted from talking about it. And instead, what you have to do is talk to other franchisees, because anything that the franchisor says to you could be used against them, which is a bit of a convoluted way to have a new business relationship. Because if you were an actual partnership or you're working together, it always would be beneficial to get some ideas to what projections would be, where you should be aiming for stuff. But truthfully, the franchisor is restricted by the legislation and the legal rules that have been put forth in what it can disclose and what it can tell you. And as such, it discloses what's legally allowed to disclose, but very little more. And everything is couched in legalities and restrictive contractual language that may seem like there's a lot of information that's being provided to you. But when you really look at it, it's very limited. It doesn't give you much in the way of insights so you can properly discern what the potential of the business is, how to make it really viable, and what the challenges are out there. Yes, you might be able to talk to some franchisees, but how much are they really going to disclose to you? The better person would naturally, in my opinion, be the franchisor, but the legal restrictions cut them back from doing that. And that is a problematic thing with disclosures. Similarly, when you look at the financial statements, it all seems well and good to get financial statements, but when the financial statements of the franchisor don't reflect anything whatsoever to do with the operations of the individual franchisees, it really doesn't give you that much financial insight. what a holding company might receive in the way of intakes and outtakes has no relation to how a single franchise unit is performing, where the challenges are, where the improvements can be realized, where the real costs are. Similarly, when you look at the documentation and they give you projections, these projections are all over the place. They rarely tell you what you really need to know. And oftentimes, they're outdated, and they might not necessarily be in tune with what your locality and your location for the franchise will actually cost. And with inflation going the way inflation is going these days, you can't really rely on some outdated document and the expectation that you're going to be able to work with those criteria. Those criteria are not going to be a lot of good if they don't reflect the actual cost that you're going to be incurring. And because there's a disconnect between franchisor and franchisee, and unless you do the minimalist amount of stuff, you're not going to get a true picture. You need to talk to external professionals who are going to be rational and reasonable with yourself as to what the real costs are. Because unfortunately, once again, the franchisor and its employees are not going to be able to explain that to you. And if they do explain it, they're not going to be held legally liable, and that's why they refrain from it. The lawyers tell the executives, do not talk about it. So it puts you in a problematic area where you're not getting current information, accurate information, complete information. That, but for the law, you should be getting and would be extremely beneficial to both making a decision and for you having a symbiotic relationship with the franchisor to make the most out of the particular business. But that's the problem that you have with so much law and so much contracts. So you have to recognize there are significant limitations in what is being disclosed. The disclosure is done for legal reasons. It is done to fulfill the statute and little more. It is not designed to show you how to succeed with the business and to show you the financial challenges, the legal challenges that go along with running a particular franchise. That is separate and apart. These are legal documents, and they need to be recognized as legal documents created by the franchisor to protect its interests. And even though it seems like they're disclosing information to you, the disclosure is done to protect their interests and is written in such a way so as to limit their vulnerability to fulfill their legal obligations, and that is all. Do not expect much from it because there's not much to be gained from it. If you think there is, you're deluding yourself. Instead, you need to talk to the right professionals and understand what you're getting into, because what you're getting into is not going to be found in the disclosure documents. All it's going to do oftentimes is distract you and pull you away from what you really need to understand and know about the particular business. And that is the reality of disclosures from franchises in Canada. Thank you.